Hi YouTube, it's Shaneli here. In this video, I'm really excited to be taking my first call from a subscriber named JB. He's calling to ask about the stock market, but if you have a question about literally anything related to money or personal finance and you want me to answer your question right here on my channel, then you can call in with your question and leave a message at 774-231-8522. I will listen to the message and then I will post a video responding to your question. So definitely check that out. We're going to just go ahead right now and jump into the message from JB, and then I will answer it with my response. So I'm going to play the clip now.
Hi, this is JB.
Hi, JB.
And I wanted to ask you about the stock market. I don't know if I'm just dumb or just don't understand the stock market,
you're not dumb.
but I don't even know where to begin.
Okay.
And I do really enjoy your videos about the credit and other money management topics. But I would really like some info on the stock market.
Okay, cool.
Thank you. And I am 37 years old, married, 2 kids. I make roughly $75,000 a year.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Cool. All right. You are welcome, JB. So first things first, I want to start by saying that since you're only 37 years old, you're fairly young. You still have a lot of time ahead of you before your retirement years come. So that means that you are in the perfect age to take advantage of the stock market. And so I'll start by saying that. Second of all, you're not dumb, JB. Like, I think a lot of people probably feel this way, where they feel like they hear people talking about the stock market all the time. And so they just pretend they understand it, but it is kind of complicated. So one, you're not dumb. It's not your fault, because we actually don't get taught a lot of personal finance stuff in schools. I never had a class where somebody sat down and explained to me how the stock market works, and chances are you probably didn't either. So don't blame yourself if you don't understand this stuff, because it is complicated and we don't really get the help at school. And then the second thing is that there's probably a lot of other people out there who agree that have the same question, but they're too embarrassed or too ashamed to admit it. So thank you for being the one to just name it. Like, hey, the stock market's confusing. Let's get down to basics. So that being said, I'm going to explain this video topic in a way where I feel like hopefully, even if you're just brand new to all of this, like if you're a preteen or a teenager, you should be able to watch this and understand it. So this is kind of a disclaimer to you. If you're intermediate or advanced level with investing, this might not be the video for you. This is really targeting beginners. And so before I jump into talking about anything related to the stock market, I think there's a few words that we just need to kind of put these words out here, these terms, vocabulary out there, because it's hard to talk about the stock market without referring to these words, and I don't want to just pretend everybody knows what they mean. So we'll start with the word stock. So there's a difference between the word stock and the word share. And the word stock basically means that you own some amount of something. And when we're talking about the stock market, we're talking about a company. So when you say I have stock, that doesn't really tell anybody how much. So if you want to talk about exactly how much you've invested in, then you need to talk about shares. So you might say I own stock in Nike, for example, but that doesn't tell me how much until you say, I own 2 shares of Nike. Then I could Google how much does 1 share of Nike cost, and I'll know how much you have if you have 2 shares of Nike by multiplying that price by 2. So shares versus stock is kind of a little bit different. It's important to understand the difference, right? Stock is more general and share is very specific. We're talking about 1 share is 1 piece of a stock in a company. So now that we got that out the way, there's also bonds in the stock market as well, but we're not going to focus on talking about that because we're just going to keep it simple. And bonds are a little bit less risky, which is why a lot of older people tend to like investing in bonds, because you get closer to retirement. You want to make sure your money is not really too risky. You want to make sure it's going to be there in a few years when you need it. So that's why I'm not going to focus too much on bonds, but you might hear me throw the word around. And then the other thing that you need to know is portfolio. This is a word that is used when we're talking about the stock market. And just like the word portfolio in the world of art, like if you're an artist and you want to get a job or you want to be exhibiting your work somewhere, you have to show your portfolio. Your portfolio is literally a collection of all the art pieces that you have. That could be 1 painting, 2 sculptures, 3 illustrations using colored pencil. Basically, however many pieces you have in that group is essentially your portfolio. So the same thing goes with an investor's portfolio. You could have 1 share of a specific company like Nike, then maybe you have 4 shares of another company that's bigger, maybe like Apple. So you could pretty much have a mix of different companies, and maybe you might even have funds, which are groups of a whole bunch of companies. Instead of trying to pick one specific company, you might say, all right, I'm just going to go with something like the Dow Jones, which is a group of 30 companies that are pre-selected. It's a list of the 30 largest companies in the US. So you don't really have to do any homework. You basically just, because you invested in that fund, you have all of those companies in your portfolio. So basically when we say portfolio, we're talking about all the companies that you've invested in and how much of your money is going to each company. Okay, so now we got that terminology out of the way. Let's start talking about the general idea of the stock market. So whenever you have money that you've earned from work or that you got from your grandma for your birthday or whatever, if you want to make that money grow, the first place you might think of putting it is the bank. But when you go to open a bank account, especially right now, the interest rates that you get on a savings account are pretty low. So let's say you put $100 in a bank and you leave it for the whole year. At the end of the year, if you didn't touch any of that money, you might get 1 penny or 5 pennies back. That's 0.01 or 0.05%. That is not a lot of money. And it would take you a really long time to save up a lot of money, enough to retire, if all you're doing is putting your money in a savings account. If you're lucky and you have a high yield online savings account, you might even be able to get 2%, which means every $100 that you leave for a year, you get $2 back. That's not a lot of money, and it would still take you a long time. So most people kind of figured it out. All right, if I just put my money in the bank for the rest of my life, for the rest of my working career, I'm not going to have enough money to retire. It's just not going to happen for me. So basically, there was this idea of investing that came about, where essentially you put money into a company that is, doing well. And then when they make, more money and the value of that company goes up, then the value of the money that you put into that company also goes up, or however much money you put in will grow with their growth. But at the same time, there's a downside to it. Unlike the bank, which usually your money will never go down in value, your money will only go up. With the stock market, there is the risk that your money might go down. So let's use an example. And let's say I have a company called MissBeHelpful's Lemonade, and I make the best lemonade. Like, let me say, I have the secret recipe. I mean, it's not that secret. I literally just take like a specific amount of water, some lemon juice, and some vanilla extract with some crushed ice, mix it up. Nobody knows how much of each I put, but basically it tastes the bomb. It's delicious and everybody wants to buy it. Now it's brand new and everybody hears about MissBeHelpful's Lemonade, so the reputation of my company is really good and people are thinking really highly of it. And so one share of MissBeHelpful's Lemonade might be worth a lot of money. Let's say one share costs $100, right? Now, you go ahead and buy a share of MissBeHelpful's Lemonade because you know me and you know that I work hard and you tasted the lemonade yourself and you know it tastes good. So now you have $100 invested in MissBeHelpful's Lemonade. And when my company does better, I start making more profit. I start selling more lemonade. People love my business even more. My ads and commercials are doing really well. And so the reputation of the company does even better. Let's say the value of that company goes up by 7%. Then your $100 investment now gives you $7 back, because that 7% is going to give you $7 on top of the $100 that you put in. So that's great, because at the bank, you were only going to make 5 cents or maybe $2. Whereas here, if I go up 7%, you get to make $7 on every $100 you invest. But the downside is, let's say somebody got a cup of MissBeHelpful's Lemonade and they were about to take a drink and they saw some hair floating around in the cup. They took a video of it on their phone and posted it to Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, and it went viral. Everybody is talking horribly and negatively about my company, and my reputation is just shot. I thought my company was going to do so well, but now everybody hates it, and there's a hashtag going around, Harry MissBeHelpful Lemonade. I mean, whatever, right? The reputation is just going down the drain. And so you put $100 into MissBeHelpful's Lemonade, thinking that the company was going to bring you more money and generate wealth, but then the company didn't do well. Let's say I lost 25% of the value of my company, then your $100 now is worth $75, which means that you have a choice to make. You can either stay invested in MissBeHelpful and just cross your fingers and hope that I make a comeback and I sell my lemonade to even more customers than before and bring the value of my company up again. Or you could sell the stock and just say, you know what, I'm just going to keep the $75 that I have left and just be thankful that I didn't go all the way to zero. And that is the decision that you have to make as an investor and as a stockholder. Now, you could have made the same decision when the company went up 7%. You could have sold that piece of stock that you had, that share, and kept the $7 profit. we always have the decision to either sell or to stay in the market when you are an investor. But long term, if you look at a lot of the historical data that's available online, you will see that if you try to continue to buy and sell very quickly all the time and try to figure out which companies are going to generate the most profit, you can kind of become a little bit crazy trying to like obsess over the ticker symbols and the profit margins. Instead, sort of a better long-term approach to building wealth in the stock market is actually to just invest your money and leave it there for a really long time. And so people like Warren Buffett and Ray Dalio, people like, a lot of different people who talk about investing, Jack Bogle, who recently passed away, talks a lot about index funds. And essentially that means that you are going to invest for a really long time. And instead of trying to pick individual companies, you're going to take a step further and you're going to say, I know there's a lot of risk if MissBeHelpful's lemonade goes down the drain. So instead, I'm going to invest in a fund that has as many companies as possible. So then the companies that do really well and the companies that lose a lot of money will average out. And then you as an investor will be guaranteed to get that average of all of the companies. And so if you do that, that's called an index fund. That is one of the primary ways that I invest in the stock market. And I've talked about index funds on my channel. There are also other types of funds called exchange traded funds. There's also, all of these are types of mutual funds, which essentially means that other people own the companies, the stock that you own as well. And that, you have some way of figuring out which companies are going to be in that fund. With a mutual fund, you usually have like a mutual fund manager, but they collect a fee. So index funds are a special type of mutual fund, which are a little better because you don't have to pay a mutual fund manager a fee. There's just a calculation, a formula that's going to figure out which companies. So for example, the Dow Jones has 30 companies that are already in there. The S&P 500, which means Standard & Poor 500, that has 500 companies pre-selected for you. So you don't have to do too much homework. My favorite index fund is Vanguard Total Stock Market, which is VTSAX or VTSMX. And that one has every single company that is publicly tradable in the stock market in America. So it's definitely another word here that I should have put at the beginning, diversified. It's definitely a very diversified mix because it has a lot of different companies from a lot of different sectors and industries. And so that is definitely a good way to invest because you're making sure that you're not putting too much of your money into just one sector, one industry, or one company, which is the worst way to invest because just like MissBeHelpful's lemonade with the hair scandal and the viral video, any company could have a scandal that goes viral that's really not good for the company. And you never know if the company is going to be worth more or worth less tomorrow. It's anybody's guess. So it's a little bit like gambling, but not really. When you invest long term, there's a lot more data that shows that you are going to be able to do a lot better over time than if you were to buy and sell quickly. So that is something that I like to think about when I invest. I invest long term. I hope that was helpful in understanding some of the basics. If you still have other questions, definitely put them down below in the comment section. You can always email me, obviously, at missbehelpful@gmail.com. You can also call 774-231-8522 if you have any questions that you want to ask. JB, thank you so much for calling me and asking this great question. I hope that I answered your question and that it was a helpful way to understand all of the things that have to do with the stock market because it can be a little complicated. All right, follow me on social media if you haven't already and subscribe to the channel if you haven't clicked that red subscribe button. I don't know how you've been watching me this whole time and you haven't clicked it yet. Click the subscribe button so you can watch more videos from me that I put out every single week to try to help people get their money right and get their life together. Till next time, peace.